Accessible and affordable healthcare. It's the basic right of every human being, regardless of their caste, creed, community, or bank statement. In India, we all know that the state of government hospitals is less than ideal. We understand that. The service is substandard, the queue and the waiting time is never ending. And even if all is well, somehow, the doctor is missing. And that's why we turn to private hospitals. In fact, one data tells us that 70% of the healthcare provided in this country is in private hospitals and small clinics. Private hospitals are everything we hope government hospitals will be one day. They are convenient, they are comfortable, they are credible. These are the 3 C's which have built the reputation of private hospitals in India. But there is one other C on which private hospitals thrive upon. It is cost. And we realize it every time we step into a private hospital. The bills by the end of the hospitalization are enough to leave you bankrupt. We are spending somewhere between 2 to 20 times more in private hospitals as compared to government hospitals for services rendered. For example, a cataract surgery for which the CGHS or government rate is 10,000 rupees or 14,000 rupees can end up costing us 1.4 lakh rupees in a high-end hospital. That's crazy. This is what has angered the Supreme Court when it took up a plea seeking strict implementation of a 2012 clinical establishment rule which mandates that hospitals across India are to charge fee within a reasonable range that is prescribed either by the centre or the state. Now, these rules, just by the way, have been in the public domain for the last 12 years now. The union government is responsible for the enforcement of these rules, but so far it has failed in its duty. Instead, in the Supreme Court, the centre has put the blame on states, saying that despite repeated reminders, states are not fixing rates for medical treatment in private hospitals. They say that only 12 states in the country have adopted the act, and hence the central government is unable to enforce rules on private hospitals in these states. But, ladies and gentlemen, the Supreme Court was having none of it. It told the centre that it cannot run away from its responsibility with these excuses. The Supreme Court has now ordered the Health Ministry and the Secretary to set up meetings with his counterpart within a month and come up with a solution. Failing which, the Supreme Court is warning that it will consider notifying the standard rates applicable in CGHS impaneled hospitals. Essentially, the court is saying, we will enforce government rates on private hospitals if they don't rationalize and standardize their rates. Okay, in case you're wondering, and if you've not had the experience, what is this loot by private hospitals that we are really talking about? Imagine this, you're admitted to ICU for one day. You will shell out 1,500 rupees for that ICU bed in a government hospital. So 1,500 rupees essentially. But if you go to a private hospital, it will end up costing you 30,000 rupees for one day admission in ICU. And that is if you're lucky. If you're going to a super fancy 5-star hospital, the charge will be anywhere above 1 lakh rupees. Let me get you another rate card. Something as basic as a cataract surgery. CGS impaneled hospitals will charge 10,000 rupees for it. That's the rate that has been fixed by the government. But the same surgery in a private hospital will cost you somewhere between 30,000 rupees to 1.4 lakh rupees. Look at the range, ladies and gentlemen. 10,000 rupees and 30,000 rupees to 1.4 lakh rupees. Even if you're a 7-star hospital, which is serving the best coffee in the world to its patients, what justifies 1.4 lakh rupees for a cataract surgery, which in a government hospital costs 10,000 rupees or 14,000 rupees? For something as small as a root canal, it will cost you between say 4,000 rupees to 15,000 rupees in a private hospital. Again, look at the range. A root canal in one clinic could cost you 5,000 rupees. In another clinic, it could cost you 15,000 rupees. Or in a private hospital, it could cost you 15,000 rupees. What is the treatment in a government hospital? 700 rupees. 700 rupees, ladies and gentlemen. Suppose you take your wife to a private hospital for delivery. It will cost you somewhere between 50,000 and 2 lakh rupees, depending on the kind of private hospital you're going to. So 50,000 to 2 lakh. What is the prescribed rate in CGHS impaneled hospitals for C-sections? 14,000 rupees. 14,000 rupees and 2 lakh rupees. Look at the difference. Is there any rationale for it? So now you understand why there is an urgent need for a uniform range when it comes to treatment costs in private hospitals. Let me go across to my guests who are joining me this evening. KK Sharma is a senior advocate. In fact, he's the one who's fighting the case in court. He is joining us on the broadcast. Dr. Satish Rath is a doctor joining us on the broadcast. Thank you very much. And Dr. Sanjeev Bagai is chairperson of the Nephron Clinic. He is joining us on the broadcast as well. KK Sharma, can I ask you how the matter reached court?
In fact, the history goes back to COVID times. That was June 2020 when the COVID was raging high. And we found out that everybody read the newspapers what was happening. We don't have to talk about it. We discovered that what is the problem. We found the solution was very much there. A law was passed. It was waiting to be implemented. So we filed this petition. So that was in 2020 June. Till date, 2024 is there. The only issue which direction was given by the Supreme Court was that let the central government determine the rates and inform them. That was not happening. It has taken us to 24. Now, on the last hearing on Tuesday, they said, So in the last hearing, what we did was that we gave them alternate rates. We said these rates are already applicable, in which the same exercise has already been done. So in case they are taking time for XYZ reasons, so they should be given the option that, okay, they can take their time, but till that time, already the central government determined rates can be made applicable. And once they find another rate, that can be applied. So that's what the Supreme Court was kind enough to tell them that, okay, you're taking so much of time. Now you come up with the rates, determine the rates, and inform these clinics so that the healthcare becomes affordable, which is a fundamental right. In case you fail to do that in coming 6 weeks, then let's consider giving directions for these CGHS rates, which are understood across the country, which are different depending on the geographical location. So let them become the rates in the interim time, and once the rates are finally available, they will be made available to these hospitals again.
Okay. Okay, so essentially, Mr. Sharma, what you're telling us, and I want Dr. Bagai to come in here, essentially you're telling me that for the last 4 years, so the rules have already been in place for the last 12 years. The rules have been rotting in a basket for the last 12 years. That's another story. But for the last 4 years, the Supreme Court has been telling the central government, bhai, fix the range of medical treatment, the rate of medical treatments across the country, because you cannot have a situation where for one particular root canal or one particular, C-section, in one place you're paying 14,000 rupees, in another place you're paying 2 lakh rupees. There is simply no logic or rationale for that. So for the last 4 years, the Supreme Court has been asking the central government. The central government has done nothing about it. And today, 2 days ago, they tried to put the blame on the state government. And the Supreme Court said, nothing doing, the responsibility is yours. Therefore, Dr. Bagai, can you please help me understand, under what circumstances does a C-section, which would cost 14,000 rupees in a CGHS impaneled hospital, cost 2 lakh rupees in a private hospital? Thoda bahut frills I can understand, people in clean uniforms, good environment, the AC working, the doctor present, everyone paying attention to you. I'm willing to give that premium as a citizen. I don't want to stand in a line in a government hospital. But 14,000 ka 2 lakh rupees?
Okay. Good evening, Shreya. Good evening, everyone on panel and all the viewers. I must mention this to Shreya. You give me the toughest debates, but I enjoy it. But coming on a more serious note, I have been a very strong advocate of fair pricing in private healthcare. There's no two questions about it. The pricing across the board in private hospitals is dysfunctional, it is overpriced, it is unfair, it is unethical, and very often it's absurd. In COVID times, there were internal circulars of certain private hospitals that the patient billing must reach 1 to 1.25 lakhs per day per bed. That's ridiculous. If COVID doesn't kill you, the bill will kill you
Correct.
anyway. But to understand the dynamics of it, just allow me a minute and a half so that the viewers actually understand what game is being played behind the scene, which is never known to a naked eye. I think if we move from costing, pricing to profiting to profiteering and so on, there are lots of factors which go into making a pricing policy of a hospital. And I must add, Shreya, I have taken some of the hospitals to task for this, and I'm not a very liked person in the private hospital circles, primarily because I'm playing fair. But having said that, there is a land cost, but in Delhi NCR, say, for example, the land comes either free or at a concessional rate because it's institutional government land. There is procedure surgery cost, consumable disposables, which now have a cap on MRP, and there's doctor fee, miscellaneous cost. But in spite of hospitals portraying and displaying their pricing on the notice board at the time of admission of a patient, there are a lot of hidden costs which come up in the bill, like admission cost, logistic cost, nursing care. Now, these shouldn't happen. These really hurt the patient when the patient is being discharged. There should be no hidden charges. There should be at least a 50. In fact, we've already done it with FICCI and other organizations. 54 common surgical procedures which are across the board mandated as a standardization. They should have a uniform pricing policy. But more importantly than that, I have two quick points to make. Hospitals must be graded. They must be graded in category A, B, and C, not from quality of care, but from pricing. And the reason I'm saying this is this will depend upon the number of beds, the number of ICU beds, the OT infrastructures, the number of ICUs, the number of hemodialysis machines, technology, type of specifications of doctors, the specialities, and so on. So higher the grade of a hospital, you will get more amount of facilities, and that is accepted. But the game begins behind the scene, and that's my last limited point I want to make is most of the hospitals in Delhi NCR, the land is owned by a charitable trust. The charitable trust gets an income tax exemption. I want the government to listen to this. I want the ED to listen to this. I want the EOW to listen to this. Indeed, I want the CBI to listen to this. It's owned by a charitable trust. So what the private hospitals do is they take over the trust or the land and they have a common bank account. A significant portion every year on a monthly basis is shifted into a trust, which is so-called charitable. That's a fraud. We know it. It's just a sham. There is no charity which is done. So you save on income tax from their point of view. The government loses that money. There is no charity which is being done. They're all for profit. But more deeply in that is that money vanishes. Private equity players have come into large corporate hospitals. They need a X percentage of EBITDA, which is anywhere in the range of 15 to 20. The hospital owners, they want a 15, 20. Who is being burdened? It's the patient. Therefore, as a summary point, their pricing policy must have some guidelines and framework. It should be fair. Hospitals must make their profit, but not at the cost of making it unaffordable. Last 10 seconds is very often
Okay.
a ridiculous statement is made by many people. Oh, Indian healthcare is 10 times cheaper than US. That's not a valid statement in terms
Correct.
of pricing policy because the Indian earning capacity also equalizes or neutralizes that. My limited point in the end is pricing. Yes, it should be uniform. There should be a standardization. There must be categorization. The sham charitable trust must be investigated with a forensic audit. I am ready to bet my last buck. If the government doesn't recover more than thousands of crores, I will come and apologize on this channel in 4 weeks' time.
Okay, Dr. Rath, can private hospitals then turn around and say, look, we never said we are here for charity. Now, I understand that much of this land, is under a charitable trust and there are tax exemptions, etc. But that may not be the case across the country. My limited point to you is, can private hospitals stand up and say, we are a business, we are not a charity, we are here to make profit. आपके पास पैसा है तो आप आइए और हमको दीजिए और ट्रीटमेंट लीजिए, नहीं है तो मत आइए. Who's forcing you to come?
That would be completely correct because if you are a healthcare organization, your primary responsibility is to provide care, and healthcare is unlike any other business. And most of the private hospitals do it in terms of so they advertise is that they care for the patient, they do it for the patient. Then I think they don't have any room to say that we are a only profitable business, we are a fintech company, so we have to have our EBITDA margins or this margin. So I will also concur with my previous panelists that there is a lot actually which can be done here, and this is actually very very unfair practice in minimum to say about that. So there can be a comparison of cost, and this is actually something what is calculated in healthcare economics as cost of care. So cost of care is actually calculated. Let's say you can have a lower cost in a government hospital because the infrastructure is not that great, or maybe the other inputs are not there. As you said, maybe the quality is not there, or the rate of infection is higher, or maybe there are complications or something. But there is a scientific method to arrive at cost of care. If you are having a cost of care with even also 30% of margin, still you're not going to charge for a, let's say, normal cesarean delivery, more than 50,000 rupees. It is just not practical. There is no science which will say that, you will have a cesarean delivery at 1.5 lakhs or 2 lakhs, where you are actually making it as a marketing exercises. There is a pink bed, there is a time when you are delivered, and there are pink flowers, and then you would be, photographed for that. But that cannot be cover up for, your exorbitant pricing. So this is absolutely wrong. I think if the government has woken up with, good, laws like our panelists, who are actually putting into it, it is an absolute must that, we have to have a guideline or a catalog about cost of care. It has to be decided, based on a scientific basis. Technology plays a very important role to make also cost of care actually much more affordable, which also can increase the profits of the private players. But the private players cannot just say that, yes, there has to be some kind of a cap or a limit. After all, this is a healthcare service, and there has to be, government has to step in, enough is enough, and government has to step in.
Dr. Bagai, by the end of it, anyone who puts up a hospital spends crores and crores of rupees building it and building the infrastructure, as I was telling Dr. Rath, is his investment. Can that hospital stand up, or can private players stand up and say in a court of law that, look, this capping business doesn't work? We are providing a service and we will decide what the price of the service is going to be. And if a consumer, in this case the patient, is not in a position to pay for that service, go to the government hospital, go to All India Institute of Medical Sciences and wait for 6 months for an appointment with the doctor.
This question to me, sir?
Shreya, should I tell something?
That question was for Dr. Bagai actually.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Shreya, so my point is...
Dr. Bagai, can I... एक मिनट रुक जाइए, एक मिनट, Dr. Bagai, I'll let you answer that question. KK Sharma, please go ahead. You wanted to make a point. Please make it quickly and then I'll go to Dr. Bagai.
As a matter of fact, the points which Dr. Bagai has raised, they are all provided in the law. He wanted categorization of hospitals. All those things are taken care of. So if law is properly implemented, all those things, what are the facilities, everything will be taken care of. And only thing is the thin line of difference between profiting and profiteering will go. And that is the only limited point I want to make. So I'm done. Dr. Bagai.
Dr. Bagai, go ahead.
Cliche very often that if a patient can't afford, he can go to a government hospital. That's fair enough. Yes, the government hospitals need to improve a lot. There must be more number of government hospitals. There must be more outreach into the villages. But my limited point here is on facts. There is a true cost to a hospital. It is called as true cost to a hospital. Every procedure has a cost to a hospital. It will be foolhardy of me to actually describe the true cost to a hospital. But let me give you one example which will not hurt anyone's sentiments across the board in the medical fraternity and the private hospitals. A true cost to a hospital for a cesarean, even in a single room in a private hospital, doesn't actually exceed 40 to 45,000. Now, there are hospitals and private clinics and extremely upmarket areas where deliveries are done at a cost which is exorbitant, which crosses 4.5, going up to 7 lakhs for a cesarean. Now, if we start equating healthcare with hospitality as a hotel, or with airlines where the rates change every day, every minute, every hour, and there is a sliding scale to put it out of budget for most people, then I think we are not doing justice. I've said this for very long. If doctors want to make money, then you're in the wrong profession. You cannot equate yourself with lawyers. You cannot equate yourself with business houses. You can't equate yourself with industries. We are here for a purpose. Yes, please make your money. There is no free lunches, but not so much that it puts it out of reach for most people. I do not believe that cesareans cost that much. I don't believe that CABGs, which are coronary artery disease surgeries, should cost more than 5 to 6 lakhs. I don't believe that joint replacements should cost upward of 5 to 7 lakhs, and so on. There is a standard 54 surgery procedures which are across the board. So let me enumerate just a few. Say, for example, like you mentioned, cataracts or open heart surgery, what we call as CABGs, angiograms,
True.
what we call as PTCs, or TKR as joint replacements. It's a standard protocol which is followed. There is nothing exorbitant or fancy done versus A versus B versus C. There should be no such vast gap and difference in pricing between hospital A and B. Again, I say categorization of hospitals in categories is important, and a price bandwidth.
ठीक है.
You can earn plus minus 4-5%, but it cannot become 50 to 100%.
Yeah, I'm willing to pay a premium, but for a surgery that costs 14,000 rupees, why should I pay 7 lakh rupees? That's a question that all of us need to ask ourselves, our hospitals, and more importantly, our government, the central government that has been sitting on the issue despite the Supreme Court telling them to put a cap on these crazy rates. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been a fruitful discussion, hopefully for our viewers as well. We'll leave it there for the moment. Thank you very much, Dr. Rath, for joining us. Thank you very much, Dr. Bagai, for joining us. And thank you very much, KK Sharma, for joining us and, more importantly, fighting the case in the Supreme Court. Ladies and gentlemen, with that, it's a wrap from me. Thank you very much. My colleague Shreya Upadhyay joining you at the top of 9 with all the day's top stories. Do stay with us.